Boom! This is interview combat. Swords clashing, cling, 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 guns. I don't have graphics, so that's just how we start. Hey there, I'm GM Jim, and this is interview combat. And today, for the first time on this little show, we're doing a 2-on-1 interview because I'm talking with Mark and Linda from Arcane. Mark, hey guys, how you doing?
Hi, doing great. Thanks so much for having us.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves and what you're doing here?
You want to go first, Linda?
Yeah, sure. So, hi, I am Linda Zayas Palmer. I have been a tabletop RPG fan for quite a while now. I started getting into the community more broadly as a volunteer for Pathfinder Society Organized Play. I was doing some freelance work, and I wound up getting hired at Paizo as a developer. I worked there for almost 10 years, and now I'm back into the game as a freelancer, working on a variety of projects. Currently, Dr. Droland's Dictionary of Dinosaurs conversion from 5th edition to Pathfinder 2nd edition. And in addition to writing and developing tabletop RPG content, I stream twice a week on Arcane Mark with my husband Mark here.
Hi, that's me. I'm Mark Seifter. And while I was not the head honcho of adventures at Paizo like Linda was, and just kind of didn't mention, I was a developer, but not only a developer. I was a designer at Paizo for almost 10 years, and the design manager at Paizo. I was one of the 4 leads who co-created Pathfinder 2nd edition during my time there, as well as being the design lead on hundreds of projects. There were a lot of projects at Paizo. Some of them were small. That's how it adds up. It's not like hundreds of 200-page books or anything like that. But now I work like sort of for myself, but mostly on contract with Roll for Combat and Battlezoo, producing 5th edition and Pathfinder 2nd edition content with new ancestries and species, new monsters, and sort of the rules to build using monster parts, and even a new magic system with 13 elements and slotless spellcasting with Eldamon that you can either collect and befriend, or just sort of have one inside of you and kind of go all Avatar on your enemies. So I just do a lot of RPG stuff. Plus, like Linda said, stream twice a week on Arcane Mark.
And once a week on Roll for Combat Live.
I do stream once a week on Roll for Combat Live. Can't forget that.
Cool. I'm here today with game design royalty. So
maybe game design barony or viscount.
So here's how interview combat works. This is an interview show, but it's not like a regular interview show. What we're gonna do is we roll contested D20 rolls. I roll a flat roll. Linda and Mark are going to roll with a +5 because that's the number of years they've been YouTubing. And if I win the roll, they're going to get a hard question. If they win the roll, they're going to get a soft question. So, any questions before we get going here?
No.
All
We're
right.
ready to battle in interview combat.
Yeah, they can see that we wasted our good rolls right before the stream with that 14 and 18.
Isn't that always how it goes, though? Like, if you're just casually tossing your die, you get all the 20s, and then it's like, oh, here's the opponent, and then you fumble.
Yep. So should you roll first, or do we roll first?
Well, I don't have my dice up, so you're going to have to forgive me for just a second. We're going to have to...
No worries.
I can roll first if you want, then. If I roll above a 20, then you don't even have to roll.
Oh,
24! Look at that! Oh no, is the natural 20 automatically a win in interview combat?
I don't know. That's a good question. Nat 20s don't come up very often, but I think we still got to honor your 24.
Okay.
So we'll start off with the soft question. What do you guys like to play when you're not doing TTRPGs? Board games, video games? What are you into?
Yes, both board games and video games. We play a lot of different video games. We've been into a fair number. I've been playing a fair number of Metroidvania games recently. We play a lot of RPGs, JRPGs, card games, games based on board games. I also like more of the chill collecting, crafting, farming games like Stardew Valley and even hidden object games. Pretty much if it's a game, I probably like it.
Yeah, for board games, one of our favorites is Spirit Island. It's cooperative, which is good because we like to work together on things when we're playing sort of like adversarial games. It's not always as fun as if we can work together against a very high difficulty of gameplay. And Spirit Island has a lot of like sort of little levers you can pull to make it harder. And we also like sort of the thematic of Spirit Island, that it kind of matches the gameplay with like how you want to feel as the different kinds of spirits. Plus, sometimes in a cooperative game, you can have a situation where like one player just has such a state of knowledge of the board, or everything that you need to do is so interactive with each other that it doesn't even make sense to let people kind of do their own thing, like Pandemic. If everybody kind of does their own thing without discussing, you will lose every time in Pandemic. But also, if you discuss, there can be just like my thing will only work if you do this thing and you do that thing. And that's right, but it can lead to one player dominating the discussion. And Spirit Island usually avoids that.
Nice. All right, let's go again. This time, let's see you beat a nat 1.
I think we got it.
Lose to that.
We got it.
Even with I didn't add the +5, but even with this 7
okay.
+5.
So you see how my dice rolls went from the nat 20 to the nat 1? And that's how it goes sometimes. All right. What do you believe sets your YouTube channel apart from others in the community? What unique perspective or content do you bring to your audience?
Well, this is, I think, an easy question,
Yes, indeed.
which is most of the other YouTube channels are not YouTube channels from people who have had nearly 20 years working a full-time job for like one of the top tabletop RPG companies when you combine the two together, obviously not 20 each. And I think that gives us an interesting perspective because, of course, many YouTubers are create their own written content, produce excellent content, and do understand the realities of the publishing industry in that regard, but also having sort of an insight into how some of the like deeper parts of the industry work and the cogs of the machine of a bigger company gives us an interesting perspective.
And that's why we have reactions to some of the books that Paizo has published on our channel, and we call that series Biased Reactions because, like, we know it's going to be biased. It's like, oh yeah, when you were working on that book, what were you thinking about? You know.
Okay. Right. Well said. All right. Let's go again.
All right. I make sure to get
do better this time.
Wow.
That's a 20 versus.
You know, Mark, I'm glad you're getting these out of the dice because we're gonna be playing some tomorrow, and he's the GM. And if he was rolling like this tomorrow, it wouldn't have been good for our characters. We're gonna be playing in a Jewel of the Indigo Isles adventure path.
Yeah,
oh, nice.
You're gonna have to deal with an evil toy maker in his tower, so you don't want those misfit toys to be getting.
Oh man, you're gonna have like a real Chucky nightmare if your misfit toys are rolling 20s all the time.
Here we go with another soft question. Do you have a favorite tabletop monster?
Leshy?
Explain.
Right. Okay, yes. So I am very enchanted by the little plant people in Pathfinder called Leshies. They've kind of become part of my brand in that way because of how much I was always working on stuff for them. They're basically nature spirits that are incarnated into physical plant bodies. So some of them might look like a cute little plant person with an acorn cap on their head. And then other ones might be like, oh, I'm a fungus Leshy. So they're kind of like creepy looking little fungus people. But I really enjoy both from like, especially getting to play them, playing a character that doesn't have all of the fundamental assumptions of a human where it's like, oh, I photosynthesize. So like, what does that mean about me? And what does that, what does it mean about how I see the world? It helps, I think, for the imagination to have something that's very different that you then are playing around with.
And for context on that, Linda wrote Leshies as a playable ancestry or species in a sort of a follow-up book when Pathfinder 2nd Edition was released. And in the 2023 remaster, they were pulled into the core as one of the main core ancestries for the game. So
cool.
Got Linda's fingerprints all over.
Yeah, well, I was in a meeting where it was discussed, like, how important are they going to be, and do we want to highlight them and stuff like that. So...
Cool. Mark, do you have a different answer, or are you going with
I
Leshies?
do have a different answer. I think my favorite creatures are usually those ones that you can never actually use, but that just when you read them, they're so high level and they do something absurd. So probably like the Hecaton Kyries with 100 hands, and it has 100 attacks of opportunity per round if it needs to. One for each hand. It can't reuse the same hand more than once. And can like dimensionally reach you across hundreds of feet because they like rip in from like outside of reality and plane shifts and cut holes in reality. And they're like a level 23 Titan that can like wreck your entire party's day. I saw Linda made a level 20 Leshy and played in a stream with queue times where they were trying to fight this thing,
and it was just
it was wrecking their whole entire team with 100 attacks of opportunity.
It was hilarious. Yeah, I love those really high level monsters too, that just because especially when you get to design that kind of things, you can come up with really preposterous stuff. Like I remember to give an example of one that's been released, doing a like a level 17 apocalypse swarm type monster. And it was this swarm of bats, but the bat, instead of just like doing normal bleed, it did level bleed. So you would get negative levels bleeding off from being bitten by these guys.
Those swarms were Linda's assignment to write them, because she wrote those, was this is like your deity or like an Old Testament god wants to punish an entire civilization with this swarm. So the bats also created like hordes of vampires when they were done. And it would just like, your civilization is over if they send these bats. So there were locusts that would just eat everything you created, and then they were gone.
Oh my. Well, that's intense. I don't even want to think about that. So, let's go again. I switched up my dice here, so they're a little...
Okay, maybe your new dice are gonna...
Come on, dice. That's not bad.
Give them some
Ooh, that's gonna be hard to beat. But I did!
But you did.
Man, Mark. Maybe I should roll, see if I can get those numbers down a little.
Well, we rolled the same amount. Jim gave us a big advantage with that plus 5.
That's true, that's true.
I'm going to have to figure out how to cheat on this thing. Okay,
well, here comes some kind of rule where if you get a certain number of easies in a row, then you got to get a hard one there. Some minimum.
Here comes the next soft question. What makes a good tabletop game master?
I would say being responsive to the players is super important, so that you are watching for not just, being able to go along with their plans and say, yes and or yes but, as opposed to like, no, you can't do that, but also paying attention to the kinds of things that they get most excited about, so that you can come and bring more of that back into the game. Like, if you have a player who's like, oh man, I really like when I get to do stuff with my armor and things like that, then giving them a chance to like find an awesome armor or apprentice under an armor smith or something like that. That's one of them.
Yeah, I'd say there's a lot of small things like the one that Linda mentioned that all add up together into that profile, but I'm going to posit an entire profile that, based on my experience from being in and running like Game Master 201 seminars and watching to see like which of the GMs like really excel at these skill seminars, because they're sometimes like difficult scenarios that they have to draw from a deck of situations, and you like score how well they deal with it. And my answer is teachers. Whatever the skill is for teachers, anyone that we had who said that they were a teacher before doing those seminars tended to like rock the socks off of even the most difficult situations that they were given to deal with tables, because the skill set that you use for classroom management to engage the students, any of those things, is what allowed the teachers to just be amazing GMs. So that's good. I wanted to give a little bit of a different answer, but I totally agree with Linda on terms of those skill set.
That's well said. Yeah, and I completely agree with all of those points. Now let's roll again. This time,
Linda, you can roll this one.
All right.
Maybe you'll get us lower than that. No.
No, sorry.
That's all right. I am running out of easy questions, though.
That's all right. You can switch to the hard ones after that. Our party has proven capable of handling the low threat encounters, so you can give us some tougher stuff if need be.
Are there any particular tabletop-related topics or trends that you're excited to explore in the future on your channel?
I would say yes. In fact, one of the things that I'm planning on looking at is doing a little bit more of sort of meta-analysis, not just analyzing what's going on in the game, but analyzing reactions to games. And depending on how much I get my stuff together, by the time this is up, we may or may not have put some of those on our channels. For example, I want to talk about, at some point, the way that people consume tier lists. Because I have created tier lists. I love tier lists. Tier list creators know this, but there are some issues with the way that we, including me, consume tier lists that cause them to like skew the way that people think about tabletop RPGs in particular with tier lists. And so that's like an example of a type of thing that I think people would be interested to hear about from us in our channel.
Yeah, I think that's going to be fun to work on. I also think another thing that can be cool to get into more is some of the shorter form content, because we've been generally doing really long videos, but seeing the kinds of things people can accomplish with short videos and even shorts and things like that, I think would be fun to get into.
I think we can combine those, because if we do something about the tier list, I want it to be shorter. We usually do an hour for our streams, roughly. It's up 40 minutes to an hour.
Nice. All right, let's go again. I got a good feeling about this one.
Oh no!
We win automatically against 3.
Yeah.
Oh, what happened? It didn't roll it.
It's all right. You don't need to roll.
It actually won't roll. It's like doing a thing where it's like neat.
Oh, we might need to refresh the page or hit clear or something.
Oh, there we go.
Now we got it.
It worked.
Finally did roll.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What makes a good tabletop player?
So I think a good tabletop player is, oh gosh, it rolled like 6 times now for us now that it caught up to it. But a good tabletop player is one who sort of has a clear idea of what they want to do with their character, but also is very generous and flexible, depending on what the GM and the other players are bringing in, and is willing to sort of go along with the story rather than just be like, well, this is what I wanted to do, and I'm going to bulldoze through to do it no matter what happens.
I would say somewhat related to that, someone who comes up with like different solutions and approaches to problems that aren't, one of the reasons that I think it's really fun to play with new players is that new players don't have these routines that they get stuck in where they say, yes, I figured out that the optimal way to do this is X then Y then Z. New players are much more likely to say, can I climb up the building, or like, can I swing from the chandelier, or can I like swim underneath, or can I do these kinds of things? Because they're not like schooled in the optimal. And I think that makes for some of the best experiences. So people who can retain some of that new player creativity and inquisitiveness are really fun to play with.
Here's a quick example of that. I was running for some like random high schoolers at one point, and I was running the game, and a harpy came to attack the party. And the new player who was playing a wizard, she said, okay, so I made a list of all the spell components this said that I have, and it says that for like the minor illusion spell that I'm casting, that wool, for pulling the wool over their eyes, is the material component. So can I take the wool and stuff it in my ears to not hear the harpy's song? And darn if that wasn't like one of the most creative things that I've like ever seen. A completely first time player who was just starting off. So this absolutely can be true.
Nice. That's smart. I like that. All right. We're ripping through these questions. Let's go again. I had a good feeling about this one.
Oh, you rolled a 13. You might get us this time.
It's a tie. We'll take the loss on the tie.
Yeah, give the tie to the GM.
We had a +5 bonus.
All right. Okay. This one time. All right, so this may be the only hard question I get to ask, so I'm going to give you a zinger. Some TTRPGs have faced backlash for their portrayal of sensitive topics like mental health, trauma, and violence. How do you strike a balance between addressing these themes and providing engaging content?
I think that the most important way to do that is to make sure that your group is sort of on the same page. And if you're talking about designing the tabletop RPG to strike that balance, one thing that I recommend is to establish a baseline and be clear about what that is. So the Pathfinder second edition core rulebook, and I believe it's in the player core now. I can't remember where it moved after the remaster, has something that's called the Pathfinder baseline. And it makes it very clear. It's like, this is kind of the baseline that we're generally expecting. That doesn't mean we can't get darker than this. That doesn't mean we can't be more lighthearted than this. But if we're going to move those bars from the baseline, we're going to make a note of it in the adventure so that you know in advance. And we recommend, by giving this baseline as a starting point for your group, that is a conversation starter. Because if you're just going to do what it says here, well, you can probably just run your game with your group. But if you plan on doing something that's not in the baseline, that's totally good. That's fine. We're not saying that's wrong. But that means talk to your group and say, hey, guys, so in the Pathfinder baseline, it normally wouldn't involve element X, Y, or Z. But I'm thinking of including, I want to make sure, are you guys cool with that kind of element being in the campaign? And probably, if you know your group and you're suggesting this because you think they'll like it, they'll all be like, yeah, that sounds awesome. And then you do it. So that's my number one tip for that.
On the publication side as well, there's a few other things that you can do. One of the things that we definitely work with is consulting with people who have expertise in certain areas so that they can read through the portrayal and make sure that it's sensitive. And, hiring consultants for that, you're not just going to get free labor or whatever.
Yeah, you want to get subject matter experts.
Yeah, like hiring
really
a psychologist for some of the things about mental health, or if you're doing something that, we'd either, hire consultants, or sometimes, folks who are within the company, we'd be like, invite them to a meeting and like, let's kind of discuss this particular thing. This is something that's related to something that you said that you're interested in, making sure it's represented better and from your culture. And so we have those conversations. There's also like, one of the things that it was always kind of an interesting challenge is content warnings, and where do you draw the line about when you put a content warning in? Because there's certain things that are like, yeah, you generally accept these are content warnings, but like, do you put in a content warning for if there's spiders in an adventure? Because some people are afraid of spiders. Do you put in a content warning for this? And that also came up in with organized play. It generally has like you should run the adventure mostly as it's presented, but there's always an overarching rule that you can change aspects of the story for the comfort of the players. So to give the spider example, if you're running an adventure and it says that you're attacked by giant spiders, but one of the players is really afraid of spiders, you are absolutely within your rights as a GM to say you're being attacked by giant web-shooting lizards, so that player is going to be able to engage with that experience.
Or scorpions, or whatever.
Whatever
works for the
web-shooting lizards was the example that we had used.
Lizards are also probably less likely to be a problem because scorpions are closer to spiders.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I would prefer scorpions to spiders, but
shooting
lizards doesn't sound so bad.
Not a spider fan?
I'm not a spider fan. I'm fine with it being in a game, but I definitely do not like spiders. But
same here. I feel like if they're in a game, it's generally okay. But like if there's any chance that it's going to touch me, then
yeah, I'm 100% on board with you there, Linda. All right, I think we got time for one more. So for the last roll, come on, I feel good about this one, and I shouldn't have felt good about it. There was no reason for me to. All right. So here's it was good timing because this is the last soft question I have in the list.
Okay.
How did you get started with tabletop games?
So I played some not like official rule type things, but I did sort of like these choose your own adventure things that my dad would tell sometimes in the car of like, so you're in a dungeon and you see that you're in a room and there's a stack of hay and what do you do and things like that. As far as like officially playing Dungeons and Dragons, I got started because I was in college and my roommate was in his game and he was recruiting more players. And so I wound up in his D&D 3.5 game, and obviously that went well. His recruitment was very successful. He got a wife out of it.
I think I rolled a natural 20 on that one.
But how about you, Mark? Because you got started much sooner than
so like I always was like kind of into fantasy when I was really little. Like my dad read me fantasy books, and at one point, like we had like a distant cousin over from like a foreign country who was trying to tell me about this game, and that was Dungeons and Dragons. It would be a while after that until I played it, but I got very confused and a little interested because he was like, so you have these 4 classes that are the fighting man and the magic user and the thief and the clerk. And I was like, okay, I see why like a fighting type person will be good. You want to like attack with your weapon, and magic user, magic's really useful. A thief maybe, you know, does sneaky things, but why do you need a clerk? Is that the person who is just writing down like what items you find? Like, no, it's a clerk. It's very religious. And I was like, why? And it was very difficult for me to understand what was going on. So I kind of always wanted to see what it was. And a few years later, I think I just managed to pick up like one of those like brown box starter sets for D&D. And I tried to run it with my friends, but they were like too young. And many of them were just like left to go like play the original Grand Theft Auto, like the really, really, really old one in another room. And it just didn't work. But I kept trying, and eventually we successfully got a 2nd edition D&D game going like a few years after that. And that's sort of how I got started. I ran a bunch of 2nd edition, bunch of 3rd edition since it came out, 3.5, a little bit of 4E, Pathfinder 1st edition, and a tiny bit of 5e and Pathfinder 2nd edition, then went back, do like a little more with 5e from creating things in it. Obviously, there's some non-Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder stuff in there, quite a lot. I'm just not mentioning it because I'm following that trajectory from the first game I played to like some of the main things I work on, but I love playing indie RPGs and some of the other bigger RPGs too.
Did you ever get to make that clerk character?
I never got to make a clerk.
You've made clerics though, which
I
are
did.
kind of similar.
I did make clerics. I had an oracle who was like an efficiency expert. It was because he was from like the ancient domain of sloth. Although before it became like corrupted and sinful, it was more about efficiency. And so like every time we were doing things, he would be like, we did well in this one, but I feel like maybe we used higher level spells and more resources than we needed to efficiently solve this problem. And then he'd be like, if we work together in this way and that way, next time we might be able to do it even more efficiently and with spending less effort and resources.
Oh no, the
It's
PC
sort of
who
like-
gives the other PC's notes.
That it's at least clerk adjacent.
Yeah.
PC who gives the other PC's notes. What a nightmare.
Yeah, it was just a silly shtick, and I guess I also had a lawyerish character, and you could be like a law clerk, but that wasn't the clerk that I was really thinking of when I heard about the clerk class.
Nice. Well, we are about out of time here. This has been great. Thank you so much, Linda and Mark, for coming. Do you have anything you want to plug? Any shout outs you want to give right here at the end?
So I would say please watch our channel, Arcane Mark, which is in that link below. It's Arcane Mark 2562 on YouTube. And Roll for Combat Live if you want. And depending on when this goes up in August, it will either be right before or possibly during the Roll for Combat's next Kickstarter, which is going to be Battle Zoo Bestiary Elemental Storm. A bestiary with 20 elements worth of creatures, special like gear that you can make using those elements, new spells, action style monster hunting abilities, which the company that I'm working with is putting out, and Linda did the development on all of the monsters. That was an open call contest for the community to create.
Yeah, so we have like over 100 different authors in that, right?
Yes.
Across all of them?
Across
Some
the
of them-
150 monsters,
Yeah,
because
and
some
they-
of them won twice or 3 times.
Yeah, so they all came in, and then the contest winners have all those different ideas. And one of the things that's really cool about having a book that comes together from a contest like this is that you get to bring together the creativity of so many different people. It's funny too when there's like these little coincidences of people having similar ideas, and then you wind up
like
with
the two spectral conductors.
Yes. Two different spectral conductors, and there's one spectral conductor who's like a real jerk and is always like, you're not perfect enough, and the other one who's like, everyone should gather together and sing. So then, like, when you're developing all this kind of thing, then it winds up with like, here's a sidebar for Battle of the Bands and how they're rivals and how you can use them in adventure.
Nice. Well, thank you both so much for coming.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.